Hello there! Very appropriate opening today. Today I'm gonna show you my process for painting heroes for an army, and I'm gonna do it with sexy Jedi Master Obi Wan Kenobi. The idea here is to spend time on him to make him stand out, make him look good, and most importantly, to have fun. I'll be aiming to have him done in about 6 to 8 hours, which is a time investment I like. So with that out of the way, grab your brushes, we're going to the lab. When painting heroes or any model that I want to spend time on, my process is as follows. First, I find the areas I'm gonna enjoy painting most and that I want to focus on to get the most bangs for my bucks. Every mini has spots where investing time on them barely does anything for the whole paint job, some more than others. Here the elements I picked are the white armor, because there's a lot of it, especially around the head, the fabric, because it has a lot of great volumes that I want to practice on, and of course the head, because I also want to practice my faces. And also, duh, everything else will get a simple treatment. The second step in my process is mostly here for efficiency. I pick one of the previous elements I chose and will do that with the zenithal prime, either with the airbrush or with the rattle can. Here the choice is obvious, it's the white armor, because I'm gonna be able to repeat that process on every clone trooper I have. Now let's start painting. I start the white armor with the zenithal as I mentioned. I do it with the airbrush, but you could do that with the rattle can of course, and that's what I'm gonna do for my clone army. I'm gonna do it with the Mechanicus Standard Grey first coat and followed by Grey Seer from above. Now before continuing with the armor, I paint everything else on the mini. This will give me a good sense of where the armor is in terms of contrast and brightness. And with that, I clean up all the armor I have by doing some panel lining. It's important to have a paint that flows nicely when you're doing that, and that's why I used some contrast medium to make it nicer and easier on myself. Now I highlight the armor, trying to respect the light position I've chosen for the mini so far, which means it's going to be mostly on the edges and the top facing surfaces of the armor. I do small dashes and squiggles to give some texture as well. I boost the shadows with some glazing as well. I do very thin glazes so I can do more and more of it when needed. I just do this to boost the contrast of the armor, which I felt was a bit too low compared to the rest of the miniature I had painted. Then I do some freehand on it to give it even more life and history. This is a very simple freehand. It's a very simple shape. I do a semicircle and then a line, and that is just to get the position of the freehand, and then I just kind of sculpt the shape I have by mixing, switching between the two colors, the light gray and the red, and just widening some areas and shrinking others. As you can see here, it's a back and forth to get where I want. And all the time I have the image on my monitor to check what I'm doing and make sure I have the right pattern on. I take my time with it because I feel it's a great part of the mini. Also, I take every opportunity I have to progress, to improve. And when I'm satisfied with the shape, I highlight it a bit, trying to follow the highlight I put on the armor already. Then I do some weathering on the armor. I want it to be extra subtle and to not draw the eye too much, but just to give the armor some life. So I don't do it with a sponge, but just with the brush, a tiny brush and some brown paint. And I just tippy-tap the armor all over. Try to be a bit random, but focus on edges and areas that would get most bumps and damages. And with that done, it's time for the tunic. Now on to the Tunic. This one is a really good opportunity to practice volumetric painting, which is what I want to do here. So I start with a shadow color on all the tunic bits. It's a deep brown. And now, after that, I'm gonna spend some time defining my volumes and figuring out where to place my highlights, which I can't do with the airbrush here. So I need to figure out a way. So I pick a light direction on the miniature. And now I start applying my midtone. This is a technique that I figured out and that I found really helpful to help me paint volumes, or at least getting started with painting volumes. And I do it with 3 colors, the shadows that we've already done, my midtone that I'm currently doing, and then a third step, which is the highlight. So to know where to place my midtones right now, I look at my miniature as if my eyes were the sun hitting the miniature. And then I try to figure out how each areas and surfaces are hit by those light rays. And I paint every surface that is hit, that is parallel or perpendicular to the light rays of my sun eyes. And I do that all over the miniature. And I frequently check with my eyes to make sure I'm painting something somewhat correct. I do not bother with occlusion, which would occur from the arm of Obi Wan here, for example, because it would make the whole process a bit too complex for me and my level. So right now I work on the tunic in isolation. And to make it easier on myself, I do it fold by fold, which here are very well defined. I do multiple passes of this. Usually, I did say multiple, but it's usually 2, just to help me deal with surfaces that aren't strictly parallel or perpendicular to the light. So I get a sort of transition in between. Some areas will get 1 coat, others 2. I just play with opacity. Now it's on to the highlights. I use a very stark color, as you can see. It has a quite higher value than my midtone. And I hit that. All the perpendicular surfaces to the light rays. And some edge highlight as well. As you can see on the fold at the front, it catches the light very well here. And already we have a very realistic look of that front fabric. Continue with every other part of the tunic that way, constantly checking how it's hit by the light. This fold at the end of the room, tunic is quite perpendicular because he has his legs spread, which raises the fabric a bit and makes it perfectly perpendicular, as you can see right now. So I hit it full force with my highlight. I really like this technique to paint volumes. It's gotten me pretty far here and helped me dip my toes into the process of painting volumes. I used to not know where to place highlights, and that way I can sort of check, make sure I'm not too far off. I can also do some sort of back and forth to correct my volume placement, since I have picked my 3 colors. So I can go back to a mid-tone, for example, if I feel I've highlighted something incorrectly. And then I add some white to my highlight color just to boost the highlight a bit more. I focus mostly on the front or other surfaces where the light is pooling very much, which gives me a sort of satin effect, which I quite like here. I really spend a lot of time on this aspect of the Mini, not only for practice purposes, but because I feel it's an important aspect of it. I really hope you give this technique a try, because I've found it very useful myself. The head was probably the most exciting element of this paint job for me. I really wanted to do a good job of it and to make a good opportunity for practice. I looked up Squidmar's video on painting faces for this, and it was a lot of help. I also tried to follow my previous method on the Tunic for the face as well. So I start with my shadow color here that I put everywhere. It's gonna help me paint this realistically and have a good light placement. Then I do my midtone, same thing, same process as for the Tunic. Look at the Mini as if my eyes are the sun, and then placement of my midtone on every surface that's parallel or perpendicular to the light rays. It's way easier on the head because it's sort of a box shape, so there's less transition surfaces, which means here my midtone is gonna be put almost everywhere. Very little shadow placement. And I guess you could ask yourself, why not start with this color? And you would be correct, that could be a way to paint it, but I prefer to go from dark to light myself. Also, I feel like I would have a bit more trouble putting my shadows on there, but you do it as you like it. After that, I need to highlight my face, and that's a peculiar process because some areas you need to know how to highlight a face. It's quite particular. For placing highlights on a face, the areas that gather most light are under the eyes, eyebrows, the nose, the mustache spot, and the chin. And so I follow that. I put the highlights where I said, also on the top of the forehead, because it does take quite some light, but otherwise it's nose, eyebrows, and top of cheeks, as in, under the eyes. Don't forget the nostrils as well, because they're perpendicular to the light. Very important, those. I try also to focus my highlight more on the left side of the face, because not only is that where the light is hitting, but also it makes the face more interesting to have one side lighter than the other. And so I keep my process going for the entire face. Let's not forget the lips of this kissy face. And then we do a final highlight on the face. I follow the same process and the same areas, I just do smaller surfaces. So only the bridge of the nose this time, and I really keep myself to the right side as much as possible. And it's mostly also the eyebrows and right under the eyes as well. And I feel that makes the face really come alive here with those highlights. Really happy with this. Yeah, I pushed the highlight quite far because it helps with the satin look of the face and skin in general. And now it's time for the hair, which is not an easy surface to paint because it's very satin and usually has some reflection and whatnot. So I start with my dark color, same process as before. I put my mid-tone, then everywhere. Same process here right now. Don't forget the beard. And then I start highlighting, but almost only one side of it, the one that's getting hit by most light. It's a smaller surface than the midtone. And now I add off-white to it for the final highlight, which is the reflection, the shininess of the hair. This one is trickier to apply because it's highly dependent on the viewer placement, the angle at which you're looking at the mini, that is. So I kind of have to pick an angle that's gonna be the angle most viewed, by which the mini is most viewed by people, and then apply the highlight accordingly. You can see that line of shininess. I'm really happy with it. I feel like it looks quite realistic. You can look at hair on shampoo ads and whatnot to get some reference for this if you want. And that's the result. I pushed the shadows a bit more to add some contrast because I felt like it was not high enough. And now the eyes. Please do the eyes. It adds so much character. I did this multiple times and still it looks really good. I also did some glazes, red glazes on the ears and the bottom of the cheeks to give more life to the face, and I'm really happy with it. For finishing touches, I really don't spend a lot of time on those parts. It's one coat of contrast and then a quick highlight. Really simple, and I do that for the belt as well as the black fabric parts. Those aren't the most sexy parts to paint and I really don't care about them, so it's really quick process. I did some quick NMM on the belt buckles as well as the lightsaber handle, just because it's easy shapes, simple shapes, and I wanted to practice. For the lightsaber I wanted to pop, so I do multiple coats of white paint and then some glazes, a lot of glazes on smaller and smaller surfaces while still ending my brush strokes toward the end of the saber to get a nice gradient going. And then for some OSL I apply those glazes on the part of the armor and the face that are really close to the light, to the saber. But I try to keep it subtle because the light from the sun is way stronger than the light from the lightsaber. I finished the miniature with a simple base. I put some elevation with milliput and then texture paste and small rocks, a zenithal prime and some dry brushing before I do a wet blending of 3 different colors, contrast paint that is, and I wet blend them together to get a nice gradient on the base from light to dark. The darkness of course being behind the miniature, acting as shadow. I do a nice black rim. Put some pigment and the job is done. And that's Obi Wan finished. I'm really pleased with the result. I think I did it in the time I allotted myself. And it was a really good practice opportunity. I hadn't painted faces in quite a while and I'm really pleased with that one. I feel like it comes alive. I feel like this is a really good way to paint heroes, to break from the monotony of painting troops. This way you get to practice, better your skills, and have fun. I really hope you give this a go and give my lighting volumetric technique a go as well. Anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please give it a like, and if you want to see more videos like this one, please consider subscribing. But until then, I have a reservation at the 3 Schmuck restaurants on Globular. So until then, I hope you stay adventurous and that you keep painting, because painting is cool.